Louise, good to see you. Thanks for making a bit of time to come and have a chat. I wanted to kick off by reflecting back to you something that you talked to me about last time we spoke. You said, I'm in the business of democratizing journalism and putting power in the hands of fans, I think was the exact quote. I mean, what does that mean exactly, and why is it important?
Yeah, nice to meet you, Paul. So we as fans, I know that you like mountaineering, I like motorsport, etc. Uh, the fans understand the power of sport. So you know yourself that it's not just climbing or it's not just what's happening on a pitch. It's belonging, identity, and
Yeah,
connection.
yeah,
And most of us remember how we got into sport. So whether it's somebody else encouraged you to go, they shared something, or asked you to take part. And we know from stats that consumption spikes around big events. So whether that's consumption of that media or participation. And so by the power that we put in the fans' hand is we've created an infrastructure layer for broadcast and rights holders that we reward fans for the moments that they share. And so we make it that content available in near real time for broadcasters and rights holders for fans to be part of that narrative, and part of that storytelling.
okay. And what exactly? I mean, just to clarify, what exactly you're trying to achieve? I mean, are you trying to enable a small group of fans to access? I mean, are you trying to enable every fan to access that kind of? Just give us a sense of the scale of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So not every fan is going to share the moments that matter to them the most, but we already know that 80% of fans already film live sport. So I'm not saying like filming what's happening on the pitch, but the moments that matter. So my brother's a massive football fan.
Yeah.
So you know if you're into football that it's not just what's happening on the pitch. It's maybe the conversations in the pub before you get the train on an away day. It could be the post-match analysis that you're debriefing with your mates about, or the predictions for that next big match. And so it's those stories that already exist in the ecosystem across social, but instead we're enabling the fans to make that content available to broadcast and rights holders before, say, it hits social, so
Okay.
that they can enrich their storytelling. you if you're within the business of sport, and sports media, you know that there's been a seismic shift
Yeah.
of how people consume content. So I'm of that era where you pick a remote control, you go and visit the live sports, on the TV on linear. However, my children are teenagers and they first discover sports on social media. And so when we look at the effects of that content, when it's told within the broader narrative of what the broadcaster is saying, we know the impact on the fan at home, not just with them seeing themselves or participation, but also when broadcast incorporates fan footage, how the adverts are received at home and the impact of that.
Yeah, I mean, it has a massive impact, doesn't it, really? Let me ask you, what set you on this path? I mean, it's kind of an odd, I mean, I think it's a great business, but I mean, it's a kind of an odd, bit of an odd business to be. I mean, what set you on the path that you're on? I mean, how did you kind of get to where you're at now?
Yeah, so a very wiggly path, but I probably have an unhealthy obsession with sports fans, but mainly because of what sport has meant to me. So when I grew up, it was a case of playing football down the park with your jumper as goals, like most people did, and still do. But it's the fact that I had a group of mates that we
Yeah.
had lots of banter, and the difference being is when I was younger, there weren't girl teams for me to participate in. So a lot of my friends were lads, but the fact that when we were playing football, we were just a group of kids playing football. And so I'm very much driven by the power of sports. And so when I dug into, so I studied media many years ago. When I dug into this shift of like how I would consume content versus my children when they were getting older, I looked at how a fan now or consumer, they want to be part of the story, they want to participate and engage. And if we don't make it accessible, then we could be losing the fan of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to ensure that selfishly my children could search maybe social media, that's their first touch point in seeing content, and then they would discover some of those live games across linear as well as other sports content across social.
And you mentioned there that the fans want to kind of play a role. I mean,
Mm,
is that? Do you think that's the thing that makes you different from the? I mean, sport's a pretty popular area. A lot of
mm.
tech stuff going on in sport at the moment. Is that the thing that you think makes you different, or is it something else?
So we have this infrastructure layer essentially to media. So making that fan content accessible in near real time, in the right formats for broadcast and rights holders and brands to tell authentic stories, whether it's in the moment or whether it's they're doing storytelling afterwards. And fans are already creating this content. It exists, but it currently sits outside the ecosystem of broadcast or rights holders because it's being put across social first by the fan, and
Yeah.
not always by fans with great following. It's not necessarily all created by creators. What we do within our ecosystem is reward the fan for the contribution that they make. So them sharing those moments, they're being bought by broadcast and rights holders, and we're sharing revenue with fans. And the reason it was driven also around the reward and recognition to that fan is, the cost of fandom is rising. In the UK, it's about 13% of your annual salary. And, that's significant in a cost of living crisis. So when you think of a fair value exchange, rather than the fan just being a cash cow and expecting to give their moments for free, we're enabling them to be part of the story, but also be rewarded for that.
Yeah, and it seems to be a very good way of engaging them actually, because they've got something to they'll benefit as well as being a sort of passive receiver, aren't they? Really, so I can see the logic of that. Let me ask you, when you set this plan, when you decided to go down this road, what did you think were the big challenges that you'd need to overcome? I mean, and have your perceptions of the problems that you faced, were they accurate, or was it other things that you had to deal with?
I would say as a startup, you face the challenge of how am I going to do all of this?
Mm.
For example, I'm not technical, so I'm a non-technical founder of Vupop. So it's how are we going to build this thing? What money are we going to use to build the thing? And then how do you scale and create interest? And so if I go back to the first point, I contacted people that are much brighter in areas than I am, such as we've got some guys, we've probably got like 80 plus years of experience in sports and broadcast in our team. And then also with regards to the technical side, so one guy is a technical director of broadcast. My co-founder is the tech side of the business. And so the challenge was getting to people that had done great things in these areas. And so that's the first thing that I worked on. And so then when we had like the foundation of Vupop, it was also the amount of research that we put into this problem. So speaking with broadcasters. So rather than building it and thinking, will they come? It was a case of speaking to um, brands, rights holders, and broadcasters to understand their pain points. And also, if you're in the industry, there's endless reports and research to find out figures of the impact of fan generated content, but also how broadcasters and rights holders need to have a connection to fans. They
Yeah.
don't own the data of fans that sit across social. So how can we help them have this infrastructure layer where they're collecting data, they're connecting with fans, they're creating authentic storytelling embedded with their live production or their broadcast quality content anyway that is already consumed, but we feel like we're that bridge.
Mm. And were there sort of on that journey that you've been on? I mean, were there sort of make or break moments? And if there were, how did they shape the way the business has developed?
So I would say, and this probably resonates with a lot of startups is money. Like you put everything into it. So I left my career, went all in, and then you're surviving on like the savings that you have, and then when they go, you're just like, yeah, playing accountant at home, and selling things on eBay. um and so I would say that some of those constraints make you creative in the way in which you're going to develop things. um and so that's the same for my co-founder as well. And there was times where I was sat there thinking, I don't know how we're going to pay our developers next month, but then say a grant came in, or so. I guess not putting your eggs in one basket of where you're going to try and get money, like blended with, we've won an Innovate UK grant, blended with local grants, savings, uh, and then investment as well. So we also pursued angel investment, and we're just about to start another raise.
Yeah. And I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they all say to me, building a business is like riding a roller coaster. There are good days
Yeah.
and lots of difficult days. What is it about this that kind of motivates you to kind of bounce out of bed in the morning and get stuck in? Because it's a tough gig. What is it that really motivates you about it? Why this business and not something else?
Yeah. So I'm passionate about, I think if you can get passionate about a problem, it makes it a lot easier to bounce out of bed. And to your point, like you say, it is hard and it's a roller coaster that, how I would say is like, I've literally bought this one way ticket because I can't get off.
Yeah,
It's what I'm so passionate about. Like the sticks of rock that, you would open, and if you snapped it, it would say like welcome to Scotland or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, if you snapped me open, I'd probably say welcome to Vupop, because it's everything that I believe. And the reason for that is sport has the power to unite us like nothing else. I actually think that was Nelson Mandela that said that. And but it truly does. And if you're a sports fan, you understand you've got this identity, you've got a shared passion with other people. And so in a world of social media where there's this increase of AI content that's not authentic and isn't necessarily connecting people in an authentic way, live sports or the passions of people, music, whatever it may be, still has that power to connect people. And that's what I'm really passionate about. And so when you look at like human psychology and behavioral science, the statistics are there that the more you share something, you share something that's lovable to you, it becomes lovable by others. And so to ensure that we've got the future participation in sport and the future consumption of sport, that's what drives me, because I know that I love the sports I take part in. However I arrived at that, however I got into downhill mountain biking or whatever it may be, you arrive there, you find a community, and that's what drives me.
Yeah. And one of the things that struck me when we spoke last time was, the sort of, you have quite strong views about how this needs to work. To what extent have your values shaped the way that you've built the business, do you think?
So I really believe in people, like the relationships that you build up. Um, for example, within our team, the broadcast guys, they've both worked in broadcast for 30 odd years each. Their network is brilliant. What they believe in is, telling authentic stories, delivering great broadcast and content to fans. So the values of having like a fair value exchange where we're rewarding fans for their fandom is a big value of mine. And is it enabling broadcasters and rights holders to tell authentic stories? And is it rewarding fans? Um, and so I think if you've got that drive, you're going to therefore show a fairer representation of a fan base,
Yeah.
which I think is important, because when I was younger, it was a case of I had Gaza on my wall, and that's absolutely fine. But you didn't see many girls in teams. There was no football teams where I lived for girls. And so now I think literally you could be anything you want to be, you just got to be inspired to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you probably don't want to tell too many people about having Gaza on your wall, but um, let me ask you about
Other players are available.
yeah. Well, no, I'm not. I mean, I've met Gaza. Actually, he's quite an interesting bloke. Actually, I mean, it was a very long time ago. But so let me ask you about this kind of riding the roller coaster thing. I mean, the resilience is one of the kind of things that makes entrepreneurs successful. They've got this ability to bounce back. I've always found it very impressive, actually, when I've heard their stories. How have you built in resilience to the business? Because the business will need to, I mean, as it grows, it's going to need to do things beyond what you do, if you see what I mean. So,
Mm.
how have you built resilience into the business? I mean, how have you been able to do that?
So I would say, and probably this stems from school because I am dyslexic. So you learn to make a lot of mistakes and keep going forward, because otherwise you'd just be ruined. So I don't see failure or mistakes as a bad thing. My dad always used to say that failure is first attempt in learning. So actually, if you can get past that and find a good solution, um, then you've not essentially failed. You've just found found the way that it didn't work. Keep trying to find a way that does. And then also being self-aware of like what your skills are and what others are. And I think if you can reflect, not always, not to think that you're always right, to think, actually, do I need to look at this from a different angle? What are other people's input to ensure that we shape this correctly? We've got some mega minds within our team from broadcast, sport, ex founders that have scaled multiple tech businesses. Like their brains are like huge. I'd be silly not to tap into to to that bank of knowledge, and I think that helps with your resilience and like your grit. The fact that you have that support as well.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, and there's something well as well by being surrounded by smart people that is helps build confidence and stuff, isn't there? I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about, I mean, one of the other interesting things about the role of the CEO is that it's your job to figure out the way forward. I mean, that's really
Mm.
what the CEO does. You don't necessarily do it all, but you've got to work out the right way forward for the business. How do you kind of cut through all the noise, all the 101 things that you could be doing to work out the things that you need to do? I mean, how do you cut through the noise? What's your take on that process?
Yeah. So you'll know that with the businesses you've had, like everybody has an opinion, like everyone's willing to share that, which is great. Um, but also, does it reward fans and does it add to our infrastructure layer that's enabling broadcast and rights holders and brands to tell those authentic stories in real time at scale? And so, if it's not fitting any of that, that's one thing. But then also being super aware of your industry, how it's changed, where that trajectory could go, looking at the patterns and trends and listening to feedback from your users. So don't be so blindsided by perhaps what you want to build. It's actually, we've been told this by X amount of broadcasters. Let's be shaping this with our partners. Because otherwise, you could be focusing on the wrong thing because you're not listening or being aware of everything around you. I would say as well, with the advancement of tech, things change so quickly, and solutions can can arise so quickly. And so, are you aware of that within your industry, or take lessons and learnings maybe from other industries that you could bring into yours? But yeah, listening and being being open and willing to learn.
Yeah. I mean, let me pick up something that you mentioned. You talked about the level of uncertainty. I mean, there is an awful lot of uncertainty at the moment. I mean, geopolitically, you've got Donald Trump doing all this stuff in the US and tariffs. You've also got AI, which is really reshaping how lots of things work at the moment. I mean, what's your take on dealing with specifically the levels of uncertainty that are around? Because it's kind of, I mean, one thing is cutting through the noise. I want to do this, not that. But there's another thing which is, well, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. So, what's your take on dealing with uncertainty in that context?
that you just have to keep your foot on the gas, because if we thought through every minute decision, then impact wouldn't take place.
Yeah.
And so you have to decide to grow a big pair of balls, for the want of a better expression, and crack on, and accept that things might um, not turn out great, but they could also equally turn out just as good. And actually, and I forget who told me this, that um, you won't know if it's the right decision because you won't know what the other decision would have led to.
Mm.
And so be certain in your actions and your way forward when you've listened, learned, etc., etc. And so you just have to be comfortable with a level of uncertainty, that it's just like a big puzzle that's yet to be solved, and you'll solve it along the way.
I mean, somebody said to me, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, which I think is quite a nice way.
100%.
Let me ask you, you mentioned about that. I mean, what would you say has been the most difficult decision you've had to make so far?
Um, it's a very good question. One of the difficult decisions was turning down £500,000.
I can imagine that was quite difficult.
Yeah,
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 I mean, if somebody offered me 500,000, I'd struggle to turn it down. I get that. So what happened?
yeah. So on our first pitch, so I know that like there's the statistics of female founders get less funding, etc., etc. But on our first pitch, we were offered £500,000 by some angels, and at the time we were bootstrapping, and so that's hard. It's hard when you've walked away from your career and you don't have an income. Um, and the decision came down to, do they fully align with us? Do they understand the sentiment of sport and really truly what it means to fans? Was that the right amount of money for the stage that we're at within the business? And it didn't all align, and so we didn't take the funding, which I know when you have got no income, and maybe you're thinking, how am I going to pay the developers in 2 months? Uh, it's hard, and some other people might have thought we were bonkers for not taking it, but I stand by it. It was 100% the right decision that my co-founder and I made.
I mean, sometimes the difficult decisions are the ones that are right, aren't they? Which is why they're difficult
Mm,
to make. You know,
mm,
you know afterwards that it's right. It doesn't always work out that way, but I'm a great believer that if you've got a couple of choices, picking the hard one is often the best one, even though it's.
yeah.
And let me ask you another question. I mean, what would you say is what factors would you say have made the business successful so far?
I would say the upfront research that we did within our industry, not thinking we're going to try and raise this money, or we're going to put our savings and everything on eBay to fund this. We spoke with broadcasters first of all. So I reached out to a guy that had televised the World Cup, thinking, well, he's going to have been in broadcast a while, and spoke about how his industry has changed, what he has seen, what his thoughts are on telling those stories, and how people now consume a lot on social. And so doing a lot of that early on before building meant that when we were ready, we had people primed to want to use the technology.
Yeah. So the research actually started to create relationships for you. Is that what you're saying?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Let me ask you about if you go back to the beginning, if you were going to start from scratch, is there anything that you would do differently this time round?
I have thought about this before, but I think it's a very hard one to answer, because if you'd done anything differently, you wouldn't be in the place you are now.
Mm.
And so what I have done along that journey is try to reflect on things, so
What
that
what sort of things have you been reflecting on?
how you so previous to this, I wasn't from sports.
Mm.
So naturally you're going to have that feeling of like, should you be in the room? um but what I've reflected on, what are the things that have worked, what are the things that haven't, So, to your point about the relationships that you build, to me, that's really important. So, one of the guys on our board is the ex general counsel of the Premier League, and I reached out to him before we'd built and said, "Hey, we're going to build this thing. Can I have a chat?" And then I'd be going to London each month to a sports meetup called Sports Pundit and meeting other people, including Ollie, and keep, chatting, having those relationships. I don't live near London. It's like a few hours for me to get there. But they're the things that matter. This creating the relationships. And so, yeah, I feel, I don't know if I would have changed anything, because maybe we wouldn't have learned the lessons we have. Maybe we wouldn't be in the position that we are. And so I'm grateful for everything. But one thing that I do is spend time on reflecting on myself,
Mm.
reflecting on the decisions we've made, and probably what could we change in the future as opposed to what would we change from the past.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you make that point about reflection. I mean, I think a willingness to reflect and to spend time thinking about what you've done and what you might need to do differently is actually one of the things that makes CEOs successful. Because if you don't think about the things that you've done, I mean, how do you figure out what to do differently? And of course, that's the thing that's so important. That's the thing that's so great about building a business is that you've got a choice, haven't you? You could do this or you
Yeah.
could do that. So it's figuring out what to do is so reflecting is the way to do that. So it's interesting that you describe that. Let me ask you about you as the CEO. Were there? I mean, we've talked about things that have shaped the business, but are there things that have happened along the way that have shaped you as the CEO that have influenced how you do things going forward?
Yeah, probably. And again, this comes back to the self-awareness. So saying about like traveling to lots of places to meet people, be in rooms, I'd often, and also some might describe it as stalking, but I would just say it was like carefully looking at where people are going to be so that I could be in that room. And I'd get off the train in London thinking, what am I doing? Oh my, I'm literally just rocking up here to see this one person who would be in a room for half an hour. But actually, that meant that I was able to have the conversations, that I have built up relationships with people, that has proven really fruitful. And like, I'm grateful for their friendship, but also for the network it's enabled. So, to your earlier point about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, I would say it shaped that more so. Like, just take a breath and think, oh, I'm going to feel like whatever, or oh, like why am I doing this, etc. And just go with it. So I would say that, yeah, most definitely shaped that side of me.
So, are you saying, just so I understand this correctly, are you saying that you've sort of got a willingness to stick your neck out and try stuff, even though it might feel a bit uncomfortable at the time? Is that what you're saying?
100%. I remember being in London at an event that Stephen Bartlett was there, and I'd got a deck created. And I thought, how am I going to get it to him? Because like everyone wants to speak to him, the queue is massive, and then afterwards, people were queuing up to have a picture with him. I was thinking, well, that's like a waste of time. So I thought, well, he's not going to be walking to the tube to go home. He's going to have a driver outside. So I basically went outside this building, searching around, and then got chatting with his driver. And then gave my deck when he came out the building, because I thought he's got to get out. He's not going to like levitate somewhere or be picked up from a helicopter. So I just stood outside and met him that way. And I just think you've got to be willing to do what others aren't, like you say.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting you say that because I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I mean that phrase, you've got to be willing to do stuff that other people won't do, is the thing that makes entrepreneurs different, actually.
Mm,
Um, you know, because often trying to do things differently means that things go wrong, don't they? I mean, it doesn't always work out the way you want it to work out. So
yeah.
it's a willingness to do that. Let me ask you about advice that you would offer to another CEO. I mean, let's assume that somebody came to you and said, "I want to build a business of some type, maybe in the similar sector to you." I mean, what would be the most important piece of advice would you offer to them?
So I actually had this the other day, that somebody said, oh, can I pick your brains to, I
Right.
want to start this thing. And it made me smile because they sounded like me at the beginning, like I had
Right.
101 ideas of I could do this and then I could do that. And I was like, you just need to strip it back. Like you're overcomplicating it. Let's go back to the start. What is the first thing that you could start with? And actually, my co-founder is very focused in that way. When I met him and said, I've got all these ideas, and he's very good at focusing, right? What does day one look like? And what does day 30 look like? Um, so I would say sometimes you can, because you've got so much in your head, you don't know where to start, you don't know who to go to, strip it back and find a starting point and then start. And then the rest will kind of figure itself out as you go. But always look to learn from others.
Yeah, it's kind of do less but do it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your point about the last point you just made there about learning from others. I mean, how do you facilitate? How do you make? How does that happen to you? I mean, do you just simply watch what people do? You read about stuff on YouTube. I mean, how do you learn from others? What does that? How does that?
I am a super curious person. So I do look at different aspects of entrepreneurship and also then within the industry. So there's multiple podcasts that might relate to media, to tech, to performance, to fan engagement, listening to all of those and different views on that. And then also the learnings that take place based on events that have happened. Like you only have to be across LinkedIn to have the debrief of the Super Bowl ad or the next white report on statistics of fan engagement, or how things are changing. And so actually now with the way technology is, we have an abundance of knowledge at our fingertips if we're willing to lean into it. um, you just have to put the time in to do that.
I mean, one of the interesting things about that. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we're not short of is knowledge, is it? I mean, it's all
Mm,
out there now. One of the things that's interesting is how you work out what to listen to and not listen to. Because whilst there's a lot out there, I mean, a lot of it's nonsense, isn't it? I mean, I
mm.
come across stuff and think, how on earth did that get out here? I mean, how do you work out what to listen to? How do you make that judgment?
With some of the podcasts and like newsletters and things that I listen to or read, I would say it's on the person. So who's saying that? Do I feel that they've had a fair view of things that have played out, and so I keep listening or reading? And then also, is it relatable to what we're building, or is it just becoming noise? Because otherwise you could be pulled into a million directions. So going back to, is it rewarding fans or is it telling authentic stories? And so only listen if it's relatable to you or is transferable. So if it's something cool from another industry that worked amazing, you think actually I could connect those dots and that could work here, then that's great too. And often like ideas or perspectives aren't necessarily new. They're just maybe a tweak on something that already existed. So if you've been learning and listening around entrepreneurship, for example, you've probably listened and learned about a million people. Take Richard Branson. And so if you look at his trajectory of how he's evolved, when you're listening and learning to others, I don't know, it just like slots into place, like, oh, they did that, so yeah, that could work here. um but yeah, everybody has an opinion, and that I think that's what makes things a bit noisy as well, of what you cut through.
Yeah. I also think it's one of the things that makes the CEO's job difficult because the job of the CEO is to figure out what's right for your company, for your
Mm,
customers, in your context, with the resources you've got and the technology you're using. I mean, there's no silver bullet. You can't just copy and paste.
mm,
It's figuring out what's right for you, which is the challenge. And I guess the only person that understands that context and what's right in that situation is the CEO. I mean, that's the role of the CEO, I think. So it's a very interesting challenge there. Let me ask you about a couple of other things before we finish. One of the interesting things about sport is that it plays a different role in different parts of the world. I mean, I was in South America a while ago, and I mean they are football nuts.
mm,
I mean it was. I mean, I was just really struck by how obsessed they are with it. I mean, wonderful, actually. But I mean, it's bigger. It's bigger than the U. I mean, it's pretty big in the UK, but it's.
Yeah.
How do you sort of accommodate those kind of cultural differences? I mean, it's great being in a global market, hundreds of great opportunities, but different bits of the world work in different ways, don't they? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Mm. So we're fan led. So it's the fans in those different pockets of the world telling their stories. And so it enables broadcasters to bring more of the cultural moments to their live broadcast, because how we might consume football or visit your local stadium is going to be different to a fan decentralized living elsewhere, but their team might be in the UK. And so because we're fan led, the cultural differences are taken care.
Mm.
The fans take care of that because they're telling their story. They live and breathe their culture and their fandom.
And I guess they've got a sense of the things that are important to them, irrelevant or not whether they're important to you, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And let me ask you one last question because it's very timely at the moment. I mean, one of the most interesting things that's happening at the moment is AI. I mean, it's doing all sorts of interesting things. What's your take on the way AI is going to shake down in your part of the world, in your industry?
Yeah. So sports is can't be replaced by AI, as in the sport itself, but it can enhance and help with efficiencies. So, like, we have AI within our platform, whether it's AI moderation, whether it's the recognition of content, the organization and filtering of that. But in terms of fans, like, yes, you could like create a piece of content that is AI generated to look like fans, but then you're missing the connection. You're missing the reasons why a broadcaster or rights holder or brand would want to connect with that fan. Um, and so I would say it's one of the industries like music or other fandoms where it exists because of an artist or a team or an athlete. And fans exist because they're people attending live events or consuming that content. I think AI is there to help with the efficiencies of the industry as opposed to replacing like the soul of sport.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I guess as AI becomes more ubiquitous, though, as it's because as the price of it falls, it's people can use it in all sorts of situations. I mean, I guess it does create a number of risks, though, doesn't it? I mean, what would you see those risks as, and how are you going to sort of deal with them?
Yeah. So for us, it might be that a fan has created a fan moment using AI and they post it to our platform. Now, that is also then looking at how we utilize tools to detect AI created content, as well as the ability that within our platform, fans can film directly in it. And therefore, that's a dead cert that it's not AI generated. Um, you only have to, I would say that fans now, or anybody using social media, looks at content and questions, is it real?
Mm.
Because before it was really obvious the seven fingers or whatever would come up within that content.
It's difficult. It's much more difficult to tell fakes now, isn't it? As the
Yeah,
technology
yeah.
improves. I mean,
And I don't know if you saw some of the content. It was I think it was Gareth Southgate where they basically replicated his voice within a press conference, but then obviously got him to say certain things that weren't true. And so yeah, it's placing having trusted outlets for content. So whether it's coming from a Sky, a Chelsea, or whoever, um, and then also with us, like we place onus on the fans to be saying it's not AI generated, like it's within our terms of the license of that content, as well as ensuring that people can film to our app so that it's not AI generated. Um, but again, this goes back to another reason why I'm obsessed with fans, because I want more sports content across social media rather than dancing dogs and lip syncs. So I want my kids to discover more sport and for me to discover more sport.
yeah, no, absolutely, and I mean that's what makes it fun. It's just that the threat of fake.
Mm,
AI generated stuff is becoming more and more real because it's more and more difficult to, well, it's very easy to produce and it's more difficult to detect. So it's just a very interesting issue. I mean, it'd be
mm.
interesting to see how that kind of shakes down over the next few years. I mean, you've come a long way on your journey. I mean, just give us a sense of the exciting stuff that's on the horizon. I mean, what are you looking forward to?
Um, Telling authentic fan stories, like people are everything, and when you look at human psychology of how you remember something is through analogies, stories, and emotions being evoked. And
Mm,
so when you look at content like Drive to Survive, where they embed other stories around the content, it's not just the cars. Um, it excites me that there could be more content that engages and allows fans to participate in that. But then the effects of that. So, are other people discovering sports that they never thought they might try before? It's that whole thing of like, if you can see it, you can be it. So, how are we inspiring the next generation of fans to love a sport or participate in a sport? That's what I'm hugely excited about.
mm. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, so it is a really exciting thing because you're shaping the next generation's expectations of what's possible. And I mean,
Mm,
more's possible for them than was, certainly when I was a kid, So, I mean, I think it's
yeah,
great. It's absolutely great. Fabulous proposition. I mean, thank you for making a bit of time to come and have a chat with us. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean,
thank you, Paul.
I like sport, so I'm obviously
Yeah,
biased, but I mean, I just think it's a great proposition, and I think it's a great way to engage people in a really active way, which I think is lovely. So it's not just sitting in an armchair watching a football match; it's being much more actively participate.
yeah. You could submit your prediction from
Yeah.
home, and then you could see yourself on the TV. Um, and yeah, it's every fan has a view. We know fans like to share their view, and that's what we want to enable.
Yeah. I mean, Louise, thank you. Really appreciate that. Fabulous proposition and good luck going forward.
Thank you, Paul. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Bye bye.